want to take a second to let you know that today's session will be recorded. So if you don't mind turning off your video and muting yourself, we will make sure to put this recording up on the Circular Philadelphia website. I am Kim Paymaster. I've spent most of my career working in philanthropy and youth development, but a few years ago, I decided to make a shift. I was overwhelmed by the environmental needs around us, but also really excited by some new businesses in Philly. These businesses were focused on creating a more sustainable future. I'm currently in a sustainability program and also working closely with the plastics reduction team at Weaver's Way. I'm also currently a member of Circular Philadelphia, whose mission is to bring individuals, businesses, and other stakeholders together to create a thriving circular economy in the Philadelphia region. Circular Philadelphia uses advocacy, education, and collaboration to push for smart transformation from a linear model to one that is more resilient and circular. And don't worry, we're going to get into more detail on what we mean by all of this in just a minute. First, I want each of you to take a minute to imagine what our region could look like if, instead of throwing things away in the trash, we were able to more easily recycle materials to help provide new items for our economy. Where secondhand wasn't seen as second rate, but rather as valuable, and where we kept our things in circulation through subscriptions and reuse systems. Where instead of putting all the responsibility on consumers to make the right decisions, we had legislation that made it easier for businesses and individuals to reduce waste. And where instead of just assuming things have to stay the way they are, we were all able to come together to create a thriving, resilient economy that reduces waste and creates connections. This is what the circular economy can do. And this is why we're so excited to be working with Circular Philadelphia to support their mission and to support each of you. Now, we know that not everyone on this call is familiar with what the circular economy is, so I'm just going to do a quick overview before we dive into our presentation today. For way too long, our daily processes and activities have relied on a linear model where we take, make, and trash things without much thought. This has led to an enormous and growing amount of waste we're all too familiar with in Philly. A circular model, on the other hand, aims to keep resources and materials in use for as long as possible. This is done through sharing, reuse, remanufacturing, and recycling. Our resources are way too valuable to just be tossed in the trash, and it's really expensive. Hopefully, all of you are in agreement that this sounds amazing. So, why do we at Circular Philadelphia think this is the prime moment to focus on the transition? Well, the pandemic highlighted some deep flaws in our systems for managing resources and waste. We saw trash pile up on sidewalks, and people turned to more disposables with concerns over safety. What we need is more innovation, or Philadelphia is going to fall behind other places that are already making the transition to a more circular economy. This statistic here helps highlight why we need to act now. Living in a metropolitan area, our actions have huge impact. So our transition to a more circular economy can also have huge benefits. So let's talk about how we make this transition. Through Circular Philadelphia, we're working through multiple channels to create a more resilient, thriving economy. This includes providing spaces just like this one today, to come together and learn from those that are already successfully doing work in the space. We are focusing on 3 areas: food systems, the built environment, and textiles, because there is an opportunity for big impact in these areas. We know that if we can all come together, there is the potential to create real change. Putting more resources into the circular economy will create jobs, it'll reduce incineration and pollution, increase equity, and position Philly as a vibrant leader in the future of more sustainable cities. We would love to have you join us and learn more. If you're interested, please feel free to scan this QR code, or if that is not the way you do things, feel free to go to the link that Nick will post in the chat. Now on to the exciting part of our presentation. We know that Philadelphia can be a leader in the circular economy space because we already have examples of businesses that are pioneers. As more people are ordering meals and groceries for delivery, we know businesses are feeling the cost of all the disposable single-use containers. This is not only bad for the environment, but we know it hurts your bottom line. Today, we're going to hear from two businesses that have brought on reusable container programs: Weaver's Way Cooperative and Tiffin Indian Restaurants. First, I'll hand it over to Marianne Kelly, who serves as the Director of Marketing and Operations for Tiffin Indian Cuisine. In her role, Marianne helped bring on the reusable container program and has been critical to its success. I know I've called her many times. Munish Narula from Tiffin was unable to join, but we know that Marianne will be able to give you a great overview of Tiffin's program and answer your questions. So I'm going to leave it to her to tell you more. Marianne?
Thanks so much, Kim. Yes, I'm pinch hitting for Team Tiffin today. And this was such an important shift for us. And it didn't just come up out of the blue. We had been searching for a long time to make our takeout containers more sustainable, more responsible. But the problem is we just weren't able to find the right packaging. So what we're going to talk about today is how we found what we did, how we put it into use, some of the challenges that we've been dealing with as well. Next slide, please. So these lovely containers here, like you see on your screen, this is a tough act to follow. These containers are durable, they are attractive, they hold our food. And our food, we do a lot of carry out and delivery. So our food has to travel a distance before it actually gets to be enjoyed. And we have to have packaging that keeps it warm, keeps it leak proof, and makes it enjoyable for when you open the package then. So it's a tough act to follow. But we've had many, many customers over the years say, you have to do a better job at finding more sustainable packaging. So the hunt was on. Next slide, please. One of the main things is the food that we produce is very, very hot. And putting it into containers that can't hold up to that just causes problems. Next slide, please. This is it's not even Throwback Thursday, but it's Throwback Tuesday. And here you see a picture of our leader, Munish Narula, who's the founder of all the Tiffins. We've been doing tests on packaging for several years. I think this picture is from 2017, that we started an active search for products. But again, these containers just couldn't stand up to the food that we were producing. That presents problems. And while our customers want us to use more friendly packaging, they also want their food to be arriving hot and not leaking all over the package. So it's a fine balance finding that. Next slide, please. So we finally, back in January of 2021, Munish happened to find the exact containers that we were looking for and said, this is it. I remember distinctly him calling me on a Saturday. I was at one of the locations and he said, we have to talk about this right now. And we did. We found the exact packaging that we were looking for that you see now coming out of Tiffin. And so once we found the product that we were looking for, we had to figure out, how are we going to get this to our customers? How can we allow them to choose to have their food packed in these containers? We worked with our website developer, who handles our online ordering, and came up with the technology that we needed so that when you order online from Tiffin, you have the choice of choosing reusable packaging so that you could place your order, select that. You also get a little reward whenever you're ordering online from Tiffin. You enjoy it, you rinse out the containers, bring it back to us. We then wash and sanitize the containers and use them again, which is the whole idea. So one of the main things was, as Kim was saying earlier, not putting all of the burden on our customers. So we decided that we would take this new packaging, we were going to buy it and we would have it available for customers to use. We want people to return the containers. We give a generous amount of time, 4 weeks, to return the containers. And you can either drop the containers off at the location where you place your order, or we put them in a reusable bag. You can hand it to your delivery driver the next time you order, and they'll bring it back for you. We also, while we do have the ability to charge customers, we've only had to do it a few times, which is really, really great. And it shows that our customers are really into this program and willing to participate and follow the rules. Next slide, please. So this is the screen that you see whenever you're ordering online from Tiffin. You have a choice. If you don't want to participate, if you don't want to have to be bothered with returning the containers, you don't have to, and you can choose disposables. But this is the screen where you choose, you read the terms of use, and then you go right on to getting your food packed in our reusable containers. Next slide. But one of the more important messages that we want to bring forward today, because of all the restaurants that we have talked to about this, their first concern is, yes, but how expensive is this? How much am I going to have to pay to implement a program like this? How am I going to do this? Well, the first thing that we tell people is that it is definitely doable, and that not only is this a great idea for your business and for the planet, it is going to affect your bottom line in a very, very positive way. The containers that I showed you, these obviously have a cost to them. They're not as much as the reusable containers, but they do have a cost to them. And you're going to have to budget for that cost over and over and over, because the containers come in, they go out, and you never see them again. And they're on their way to the landfill, or they're holding paint or screws or something like that. You never see those containers again. With our new reusable containers, they pay for themselves over time. And so it reduces your cost overall. Once you use these, maybe 20 to 25 times, they've paid for themselves, and then they start saving you money. So it's a very short period of time to be able to affect your bottom line. So it's not only helping the environment, it's also helping your budget as well. Next slide. They're easy to source. There is an American company that is also the manufacturer where we get them from. They're called GET. They're out of Texas. There's different sizes. The 3 sizes that we use that you can see in the picture, that covers probably 90% of all of our food items. And we're working on getting the other ones into more stable packaging as well. They're highly durable, very easy to maintain, and lower long-term costs as well. It also reduces the environmental damage because the single-use containers, they are produced, they're shipped, they're used one time, and then they're sent to the landfill. So you're reducing that entire process, and it eventually gets into the millions of containers that are then diverted from both production and the landfill. We estimated, I haven't done a new estimate for a little bit yet, but I think it was the middle of March, our first anniversary of using the containers. We estimated that we diverted about 125,000 containers from the landfills, single-use containers that weren't produced and weren't sent to the landfill. Next slide. Here's just a couple of pieces that we use, that we developed, a marketing piece that goes with the bags to help customers understand how they need to process the containers once they receive them, and getting them back to us. And then there's also a cleaning process for the containers. And so we have multilingual signs in our dish rooms to let the staff know the appropriate way to clean them, keep that front of mind, because staff changes out regularly. So that way they always know how to handle the containers. So that's an overview of how Tiffin handles our containers.
Thank you so much, Marianne. That was amazing and great to hear about the program. We will definitely have questions and time for questions from all of you in the audience after both of our presenters speak. So feel free to start putting those questions in the chat and we'll make sure to get to those. But before we do that, I wanted to first introduce Norman Weiss, who serves as the purchasing director for Weaver's Way Cooperative. For over 4 decades, Norman has helped the co-op focus on sustainability. Most recently, he's been focusing on replacing single-use packaging with reusable, refillable containers. And this has been done in partnership with ecosystems. Norman, can you tell us a bit more about these efforts and the programs?
Sure. So we show the next slide. We partnered with ecosystems. Elisa Shargorodsky was really pushing us to reduce our use of plastic. We have a plastic reduction task force, which is made up of our members who basically volunteered to be on the committee to look for ways to do this. And we had a couple of different programs going on. We had a TerraCycle thing going on. But Elisa wanted us to, to do something sort of more impactful, especially when we used to report on how many containers actually we went through in a year. And I think the last number I recall, and these are the plastic containers similar to what Tiffin was using, the single use, it was 800,000 in 1 year. And that was mainly our deli departments, our prep food department. So it was a lot. It was, so Lisa, had the idea that we could try a refillable container. And like Tiffin, we did a search. I think I tried every Rubbermaid container I could find in the market. I even looked at some actual stainless steel Tiffin type containers. We could not find anything. Finally, we landed on those exact same Get containers that Tiffin did. And so that's how we got started. You can show the next slide. We also had, so there are some other of our vendors that already had reusable containers programs at work. And this was kind of informal. It was just a handful of our vendors. One was Wholesome Dairy, one was Swiss Villa, milk and glass. They could take that back. And this was very minor. Like we're talking about a couple dozen containers a week, but at least it was something. And then the other thing Lisa really pushed us to do was to eliminate plastic wrap where we could, especially in deli for cheeses and sandwiches. So that's sort of just recently started. It's still being integrated. Some cheeses work for it, some don't, so it's very much a, learn as you go, what makes sense, what doesn't. Next slide. So the way the container refund program works now is we have 3 different containers, I think right now. We actually started with soup and glass, and that's still our most popular thing. We started with quart soups in glass. They used to be a quart plastic container. I think we don't have huge numbers so far. I think the last year, maybe there were 2,000 that got sold and about 1,000 that got refilled. And then we also, in produce, we're using a container like this. And then in prep, we have the bucket container that you saw already that Tiffin uses. You'll see a couple on the next slide. So with us, we have 2 things that are different for any grocery store compared to a restaurant, and that is labeling. You could go to the next slide, I guess. This shows you how many. Oh, so we're up to 3,000 plastic containers averted, 1,700 returns. So it's a 54% rate of return. And we charge a $2 deposit up front. So when you check out, you're paying that $2. And then when you bring the container back rinsed, you get the $2 back. And then, same thing over again. And then you buy another another product in a container, you get charged the deposit again, you bring it back, it gets refunded. So there was a fair amount of POS system integration. And then you see the pictures on the left here. This is how we collect them, because the cashiers are involved collecting, the containers that come back. They have to be stored until they get taken to our ambush store to get run through the dishwasher. So there is this logistics component. There, we had to do a fair amount of cashier training. We had to do some modification. We had to use some, I don't want to say modification of the POS system. We used some features of the POS system, which was actually set up for bottle deposits, like in the old days when you bought, Coca-Cola in a bottle and you paid a deposit and you brought it back and got that deposit back. Well, like the remnants of those systems still exist in grocery store POS systems. So we're using that. There's in addition to the cashier training, there's staff training in the departments. So prep foods, they have to know that, okay, I'm making however, 30 quarts of soup or whatever, I'm going to pack them. I'm going to put 20 in the plastic ones, and I'm going to reserve enough to do 10 in glass. Because that's, it's based on what we have room for, based on what's been selling. So, and this is very much still a work in progress. Next slide. So I alluded to labeling. So that's the big difference between a grocery store and a restaurant, from what I understand. In a grocery store, as soon as you put something in a package and put that package on the shelf, right? This is not made to order or sliced to order in the deli or anything like that. This is something that sits on the shelf until a customer comes along and buys it. It has to have a label. And that label is, the FDA governs what has to appear on that label. And that's very specifically, it's the name of the food, the quantity in the package, the ingredients in descending order by weight. You're supposed to have nutritional information. We don't have that. We're small enough that there's an exemption for smaller businesses. Allergen labeling is required, and your name and address. So this was difficult because, and that's why you see these rubber bands, and this is sort of an inelegant solution, but it's all that we could come up with. So because these containers are going to get refilled, and because, one time they may have pasta salad in them, and the next time they may have tuna salad in them, they're not, they're different products at different times. The labels come out of our scale because generally these items are sold by weight. So we have to have the weight declaration on there. And we also like to have a sell by date and a use by date. And because there's no way to affix these labels with a glue that could then come off in the dish machine or was otherwise easily removable, at least they came up with this, somewhat inelegant solution of just rubber banding them onto the container. So that's what we have. Our hope is that if a bunch of grocery stores started doing this, like there are dissolvable labels out there that restaurants use for like backroom rotations, that when they go through a dish machine, they'll dissolve and go down the drain, but they don't exist for printing scale label stock right now. So this is where we're at with this. Any questions about any of that, or all right, we can go to the next slide. So this shows some of the products we're packing. So like I said, we started with soup and a glass quart container. And then we also, our produce departments found those also worked well for some cut up fruit. So we're doing that. And then for bulk and for our prep foods, and we just started with some deli items like olives and some of the shredded cheeses. We're using the little tub. And then the one below that, there's the rectangular one that we're using for produce. And then another rectangular one that we're using for other produce items. And they each have the deposit cost. And basically that deposit cost is a little lower than our actual cost. We're probably paying about $1 more than these, but we wanted to keep these low. and just an even number and not get too complicated with it. Next slide. So these are in our POS system. We're with there's this, you see the middle column is called SKU, SKU, which stands for stock keeping unit. This is how retailers work. Like every item has a number. Often there's a UPC also, but I don't want to get too technical, but basically the SKU number is a number that positively identifies an item in our system, right? Every item can only have one SKU number, and one SKU number applies to only one item. So that's like a core thing in our whole, basics of the POS system. And then after that, that lets you link to the department, the price, and then with these containers, because I said before they're weighed items, they have to have a tear. We have to take out the tear, which is the weight of the container, because we're not allowed, or nor would we want to, charge the customer for the weight of the container. So this is the list of items that are currently in our system. Actually, it's a little longer. This is just a little snapshot. But that's like the back end of how these things look in our POS system. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you both so much for this great presentation, for introducing all of us to your reusable programs. So we want to turn it over now to a little bit of Q&A. I am going to stop sharing so we can see all of you. So we can see both of you. And we're going to try to get to some questions from the audience. So if you have any questions from either of these presentations, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll make sure to get to both of those. The first thing I wanted to highlight was just, these were new programs that you both, embarked on. And I want to talk about what were some of the challenges that you've both seen in terms of maintaining these programs as you moved along and then scaling them up. It's something to start with a few of these containers, but now, Marianne, you mentioned the numbers that you all have seen. And Norman, I know that, there are a number of different products that you all are bringing on in terms of reusables. So I'd be interested to know what that's been like. Marianne, do you want to start?
Sure. So the biggest challenge to date has been one, it was initially training our staff on how to deal with the containers, working it into the production flow, because using these containers does take a few different motions, filling them. One of them has a screw-on lid. And so it does take a little bit more time. And when you are crushed with orders, say it's 6 o'clock on a Friday, it can be a little bit challenging, but it's using them in the production line, but also get what to do when the containers come back, when our customers return them, and then the proper washing procedure. So we held multiple trainings, still do, because, staff turnover, you get new people in and they have to learn how to do it as well. The other side of it was helping our customers and educating them on what to do, because it's more than just checking that little box when you're placing your order. It's making sure that the containers are returned to us. Our labeling issues, we have labeling issues just like Norman and Weaver's Way do, but getting our customers to rinse those containers out, put them back in the original bag, and then get them back to us. Initially, you would forget, or people would lose them, or their roommate threw them out, things like that. And also there was a lot of excitement about it. And so there was a lot of people at the beginning who wanted to try something new, but then they realized that there were other steps involved. So they reverted to traditional containers. But at this point in time, people say, well, don't you need to put some kind of a program in place to get them to return? No, because the people who are participating are the ones who really, really want to do this. And our customers really deserve a lot of the credit on making it work, because they're the ones who are making sure that the containers are getting back to us. Labeling is an issue. We're still working on that because most paper-based labels have a sticky substance to them. The paper washes off and the sticky part is left behind. I have a new label that I'm working with right now. They're really expensive, so we're trying to find a way around that. Scaling up with Tiffin is not hard because we control the process. We've also looked at scaling up through the community itself with other restaurants, providing that kind of a platform. That's going to take some doing and a lot more research because that involves a lot more systems than we're prepared to take on at this time.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful to understand. Norman, do you have any thoughts on that?
We had some similar issues with staff training and you know, exactly like Marian said, that it's out of the flow of what the staff is used to doing, especially we're space crunched, and there's also our kitchens are sometimes very busy. And this was, some people looked at this as a nuisance and as an interruption in their normal job. Despite us having, you know, this kind, you know, environmental protection in our mission statement and all. So getting staff to buy in, that was a challenge, which we're still working on. And it was definitely, there's a spectrum of people. Some staff were gung ho, you know, want to do what they can to help protect the environment. And some staff are just like, this is making me less efficient. I'm not doing my job as well. So we're working through that. The labeling, as we already said, was a big issue. And then in our, depending on the store, especially our Mount Airy Chestnut Hill store, space is such an issue. Like just finding space to, especially to store the returned ones that were waiting till enough of them collect to make it worth doing a wash. That is a big deal. And well, Marianne, I'm sure knows this too. The storing them, like all the while, we had to work with the health department because you can't violate any health department regulations. And in fact, one of the things that makes these GET containers so good is that they're NSF approved. That was the other, it was hard to find other ones like that. So even storing them, like they have to be, the soup things that go in a rack, they have to be upside down, they have to be covered, because you can't just have stuff falling in a container you're going to then put food in. So that meant that space is dedicated, you know, had to be really specific for them. And, you know, we even bought, you know, specialized racks and stuff. Those are the, I think, the main challenges. I mean, there was also a capital investment, but that, I think we spent $13,000 so far. For us, that's like a reasonable amount. And like Marianne said, over the life, I think the containers were up to over 25 cents with a bottom and a lid. So, you know, it's not too long before the $3 for a GET container, you've now, you know, you've made that up. And I think one of your questions was how long, what's the life cycle of these containers? And we don't even know. Like we've never had one not work yet. We lose lids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no container has failed or yet. They look like new when they come out of the.
Yeah. No breaks, no chips,
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're very durable.
That's great. As a customer, I will say that I agree, and they look brand new every time I get one. So I'm in agreement with that. Norman,
and I will add that staff resistance definitely went down when they realized that sales were going up, because people were specifically coming to Tiffin in order to get those containers.
That's great. And I guess to that point, in terms of kind of getting everyone on board, you know, with this new direction, were there particular concerns like that, Marianne, or were there particular strategies that you all used to get folks on board? Like, how was that process in terms of leadership and staff, you know, and everyone involved?
Yeah, so I did most of our staff education and training on one, how to handle the containers themselves, but also the technology piece that our developer, Spice App, Girish Kartha, he worked with us very closely on that to make it simple for us to be able to manage the flow around the containers. So, but our staff is great about that. Whenever we implement some new technological change, they're right on top of it. So learning how to do it, but also fitting it into their day and knowing when to check in the containers, when to deal with them. It's not in the middle of a busy dinner, but finding time within the day. And now it's more second nature.
That's great. And Norman, I know at Weaver's Way, there's definitely, there's been mixed kind of reactions in terms of, how easy or hard it is to bring on reusable containers. How have you all handled that? And like, what does the training piece look like? What does kind of that relationship building piece look like?
Well, so there's, Elisa did a lot of our staff training. And we did have to do a little top-down prioritization, I guess you would say. So our general manager, John, is on board with this. And so once he got that message out that not only are we as an organization, this is part of our mission, we're making this a focus and your jobs are actually going to have requirements to participate, then that puts sort of that kind of light on it. I mean, ideally, people would be naturally from their own instincts be motivated, but the reality is you don't. I mean, we have 230 staffers. They're from all walks of life, different cultures, different backgrounds, different priorities. So making it a sort of a corporate culture priority has helped, and like gives us a little backup when we go in and say, all right, we really want you to tell the head cashiers at the front end, we really need you to carve out a space for these returnables. And if you need help doing it, we'll come up there and help figure it out. If we need a cabinet built, we'll have facilities build a cabinet, like whatever it takes, we'll help make this go easier for you.
Yeah.
That's great.
When we saw over the pandemic, when a lot of restaurants had their dining rooms closed, us included, and we reverted entirely to carry out and delivery, that's when it really struck us about how much packaging was going out the door and why this was so vitally important.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And I feel on the customer end, we see all the packaging coming in. So it's nice when it can go back out and be reused.
Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
That's great. And I will say, just kind of adding to what both of you have said, I will say that before the pandemic, I had ordered from Tiffin, a few times, and I typically tended to save it for special occasions. It was that fancy meal that I would get out. And, as one of those people focused on sustainability, I will say that that prompted me to order from Tiffin more regularly. And so it is, in terms of, the bottom line and getting customer loyalty, that does work. And I would say the same thing for Weaver's Way.
Yeah, and that's part of our messaging to other restaurants is you're going to see an uptick in business because people will gravitate toward you when they want a more sustainable option. We were the poster child for that. We saw it immediately, double-digit sales increase in that time period when we launched the containers. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, no, and I think, that's the same for Weaver's Way. I think that bulk section kind of sets Weaver's Way apart. And then you add in these reusable containers. It's an amazing option to have in Philadelphia. Norman, you had also mentioned a bit about the rules and regulations that you all have to follow, in the grocery space. And I assume that some of those are different from what Tiffin has to follow as a restaurant. And so I'd be interested to know kind of from both of you, what were some of those rules and regulations, and like, how did you all kind of go through the process of figuring those pieces out? Norman, I don't know if you want to elaborate on some of the points you had already made.
I think food safety wise, we're the same, like the same licensing, the same probably serve safe certifications of the staff that are, certain managers. And basically that's just like keeping stuff clean and not letting bacteria to multiply that kind of thing is the same. We also consulted with the health department first I think Elisa actually got a variance to allow containers to be refilled, because I think first that actually was not allowed. And also we're in two jurisdictions where our Amber stores in Montgomery County, our Mount Airy and Chestnut Hill stores are in Philadelphia County. The rules are slightly different, believe it or not. From Montgomery County, we got pushback on the glass of all things, which I thought was the most cleanable, common. Every restaurant has glasses on their table and with water and china dishes and whatever. So anyway, we did sort of have a bit of a rigmarole with that. I don't know if that was just the individual inspector, but mainly we just follow all our normal, health department, rules and regulations, which are all on their website. Like they're good about that, the health department.
Yeah, and we have the same thing. It's cleanliness of the containers and making sure they're being dried properly, stored properly. And, but it's, people say, don't you have a concern about reuse? Well, when you go into a restaurant and sit down and eat, those dishes that you're eating on are used over and over and over. And they go through a certified dish machine that cleans them, cleans and sanitizes. So it goes through the same process. We don't have, Weaver's Way and Tiffin have the same cleanliness issues. We have the same health department rules. That is all the same. Where we differ is on labeling. We label because we want customers to know what's inside the container. Norman has to label because it's required. We don't have that same requirement. But we do like to label because it's part of something that Tiffin has always done, making sure that there's a label on the food.
Great. No, that's really helpful. And then thinking more about like your individual models. So something that I found interesting is that both of these organizations use slightly different models in terms of the fee for the container. And so I know at Tiffin, the charge is if you don't bring your container back. Whereas at Weaver's Way, there's that $2 deposit on many of these containers when you first make your purchase. And so I'd be interested to know kind of how you all came to that and, how that's working for each of the businesses. So Marianne, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Sure. We look at this as a way to attract more business. We want to be more environmentally friendly. Our customers do as well. So we want to do everything we can to assist in that process. And so rather than make it a penalty, we just want people to use the containers and bring them back. Yes, we have some loss, but we're willing to absorb that loss for the good of the program. This is very valuable for us, and we feel that it's very valuable for our customers and the communities in which we operate. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible on everybody. So while we do have the ability to charge, we have done that as sparingly as possible. We'll send reminder, please bring them back. And people have complied. People have also been very honest in saying, I lost them, I tossed them, I gave them away. I even had somebody tell me that their dog ate them. So we did charge them for them in those instances. But it's been very few and far between. And we will say every single time how great our customers have been in this. So we're more interested in using it as a marketing tool and for building our customer base and providing a really, really vital product.
Excellent. And Norman, I know kind of the volume, I imagine in some ways, with people doing weekly grocery shopping is a different model. So I wonder if that affected the way that Weaver's Way does its program.
I mean, the way I remember, I don't think it even occurred to us to have the Tiffin model where you give it up front and then charge if they don't come back. I think we were already used to it from the milk,
Yes.
the milk and glass deposits. And we were just, set up to think that way. So it wasn't really ever discussed. It was just assumed from the get-go that it would be an upfront deposit.
Well, this is great because I think our audience gets to hear about two different options. So that's always a good thing. And I have to ask, Marianne, I actually don't think I totally understand what the T coins are. So maybe you could explain what that aspect is.
T-coins are part of our rewards program whenever the rewards are loyal customers. So whenever you order online, you get 10% back in T-coins on all full priced items. And one T-coin equals $1. And then you can use those T-coins as a discount on future online orders. So for instance, if you buy $30 worth of food, you get 3 T-coins or $3 that you can use as a discount on your next order. You can use them all up every time. You can save them. It's like a little savings account. Our customers love them. We've had that in place since 2016, I think, is when we launched our T-coin program. It was called something else then. I don't even remember. But yeah, so T-coins have been active as part of Tiffin for 6 years now. And that also, you get a double bonus. You get T-coins when you order online, and you also get the choice of reusable containers. It's a win-win.
Excellent. I'm glad I asked that question. Well, another question that we have here is about kind of what people are saying. So, have you heard about from other businesses or customers or organizations that, are interested, have questions about, this new model that you've put out there in terms of reusables? Are people curious to learn how it works or kind of what the ins and outs are, as you've brought this on?
Yes, we've heard from many, many different restaurants. Of course, our owner, Monish Narula, he's tied into the restaurant community, and he's talked to many of them that want to know exactly that. How can we implement this? What are the cost factors involved in it? How do we set up this system? We've also been letting people, different restaurants in the area, know about the point of sale system that we use that was developed specifically for us and has this technology piece in it. And that makes things much, much easier for us, and it can for other restaurants who may not be using a well-formed point of sale system, or they may be relying only on third-party delivery companies. And so we have a very robust online ordering platform, and the reusable containers is a part of that. So we let customers know how they, or let other restaurants know how they can do the same thing, and what it will mean to their bottom line, as it has for ours.
Excellent. And Norman, I know there's, Philadelphia has kind of a rich environment of co-ops. We're really lucky to have a number of these great options. And I don't know if you've, heard from other co-ops or from customers, that are interested in learning more about the reusable system.
We haven't, and I haven't seen it much in the grocery industry in general, except, I don't know if you've heard of Loop. There was a partnership with TerraCycle and I think Unilever, and then they expanded, maybe they got General Mills, one of the other big ones involved, Nestle or somebody, and Haagen-Dazs. So that's the only thing I've seen like in the grocery industry. And that's on a way more massive scale than we are.
Well, maybe
it's not localized. Like those containers, you ship them back via UPS or whatever.
Right. Well, hopefully this is just the start. So hope, we get to see more of this as we move forward. And Norman, can I ask you, in terms of using the reusables, do you need to be a Weaver's Way member to have that option? And question from our audience.
Let me think about this.
From what I know, I don't think you need to be a member.
Yeah, because it's, when I showed you the SKU, it's SKU based, it's item based. And since we're not doing what Tiffin does, which is not charge the person unless they don't return, you already bought it. Like, if you don't return it, it's kind of on you now.
Excellent. So if anyone wants to give it a go, please feel free to stop by any of the 3, soon to be 4 Weaver's Way locations to see what those look like. Marianne, another question from our audience was if all of the Tiffin area locations do have this option for the reusables, and are you seeing any differences in kind of use between those?
So yeah, all 9 Tiffin locations have reusable containers. I will let customers know that as part of our technology because we do need to make it easy for our staff as well. Every location has the ability to turn off the option for reusable containers. When it's incredibly busy, they may be too hard to deal with. And up until, oh gosh, maybe a month ago now, we just didn't have enough supply. This was so popular so fast that we had trouble keeping up. So we just received a whole new shipment of all new containers. So we were having to turn off the option frequently because the containers would come in and they would immediately be gone. So we just couldn't keep up as far as the numbers of people who wanted them. But now we're in great shape. We have enough containers for everybody. But we do have that ability to turn it off for some reason. Either we're too busy, we can't manage the containers at that time. So if you don't see the option on the website, on the ordering site, that's why. And you'll see it up again the next time. But yeah, there are times when we just have to turn off the option for it. But we don't want to have to do that, but sometimes it's necessary.
Excellent. And I will say that a few times I've called, the folks at Tiffin have been very helpful to say if they have them in stock or not. So you can
Good.
find out that
Yes.
way as well.
And that's one of the other questions that we get is, well, why do you have to order online to get these? Because we aren't using the Weaver's Way model. And so we want to make sure that we get those containers back. And so it's a tracking piece. Just the same as when you take a book out of the library, they know that Marianne Kelly took that book out of the library. And if I don't return it, they're going to send me reminders to say, hey, we need you to bring that book back. Well, if they didn't have my information, they wouldn't be able to contact me and that book could be gone forever. So by being able to order online, we know that Kim Paymaster has that collection of containers, and then we can reach out to you directly and say, please return.
Perfect. So we have one last question in the spirit of waste reduction. Kind of thinking about these containers. I know, Norman, I think you said, we've been using them for so long now and they've all held up. At some point, obviously, we figure that these containers, will break down far, far in the future. How do you all think about kind of end of life of these containers and, what do you hope will happen to them?
I haven't thought about it.
I have in my reusable container dreams. Because if you have one of the containers at home, I'm looking on it here, if you can't see it here, but if you look at the containers with the little recycling triangle, it says number 5 PP. And so these containers are made of very heavy duty polypropylene, which is a very recyclable form of plastic. Now, it's not something that your local recycling your municipality is going to pick up in their recycling because they're not picking up 5 and 6, but this is a recyclable product. So because the containers are being returned to us, then we can control them. And once we develop a critical mass of these, we can find the right manufacturer who can turn them into something else. They can be made into park benches, into clothing, into speed bumps, even into tools, gardening tools, all kinds of things. Polypropylene is a very recyclable form of plastic. It's melted, extruded, made into pellets, and then those things can be made into many other things in turn. So I have a vision of a whole fleet of park benches eventually coming out of our containers. But it's a long time from now, as these containers have a lifespan of 1,000 to 1,500 uses. We got a ways to go.
And that's, I feel like, the important thing to remember is just how many other containers you are diverting from the landfill as you do this. So
yeah,
thank you both.
You're welcome. Yeah, this one container, this is 1,000 to 1,500 single-use containers. Aren't produced, aren't landfilled.
Amazing. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you again to our audience for joining us and to our two wonderful speakers. We have learned so much. I've learned so much. This has been a wonderful conversation, and we really hope it's just the beginning for many of you. Please reach out to us at Circular Philadelphia by email or social media. We hope to connect with each of you soon, and we hope you enjoy the rest of this sun-filled day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.